Hey everybody, welcome to PC Perspective. I'm Ryan Schrout. Today we're going to talk about VR build guides, and we're going to start with our budget build. Now I want to be upfront. This is not the cheapest gaming PC you can build. This is not the cheapest really anything. We set our target at $900, which was based on the assumption that way back in the day, Oculus talked about being able to get into the Oculus Rift VR kind of ecosystem for $1,500. Now that we know that the Oculus Rift is $600, we know that basically leaves us $900 to build a PC. So what we wanted to do was build a PC with that target price in mind, and then judge performance with the Rift when it ships accordingly based on those components. So here is kind of the layout of the land of what we have selected. We're going to start with the processor. We have an Intel Core i5-6500. This is a $204 processor, depending on when you actually look. It's quad core, not hyper-threaded, but it is quad core, true quad core, so you should have no issues with games that have threading requirements or anything like that. It is Skylake, so it's the most modern architecture that Intel has available. It's only got a 65 watt TDP, which is nice. Things will run a little bit quieter and cooler. 3.2 gigahertz to 3.6 gigahertz clock speed, 3.6 being the top turbo speed. And it's got integrated graphics and stuff on it, but obviously we're not using that for our VR build. Now this will plug into a Gigabyte H170 Gaming 3 motherboard. Now it's an H170 rather than a Z170. These are lower cost, more budget products. This board you can pick up for $94 as we record this, so it's a really good deal. But you still really get the things you need out of a motherboard for a system like this. You've got 6 SATA ports, you've got 2 M.2 ports that support PCIe and SATA. Should you want to, go away from our storage suggestions and go down that road. It's got killer gigabit networking. It's got Realtek ALC 8-channel audio. It's got an upgradable op amp on there. Metal shielded PCIe slots, so they're a little bit stronger and more protected, which is nice. You've got 4 back USB 3.0 ports and 4 front USB 3.0 ports. So again, no issues there in terms of connectivity, either for your other uses or for the VR hardware you'll need. One thing you will note, this does not have SLI support. It has Crossfire support, but not SLI support. So if you wanted to do multi-GPU down the road, you'd have to upgrade your motherboard, probably your power supply as well. So just something to keep in mind. For our system memory, we have 8 gigs of Ripjaws memory, 2400 megahertz DDR4. This we picked up for $43. This is $43 for 8 gigs of memory, which is the minimum requirement from Oculus and HTC, but is plenty for gaming. No issues there. For our graphics card, this is kind of the most important component for a PC gaming build in general, but especially so for VR. So we went with the EVGA GTX 970 Superclock Edition here. It's $309, 1664 CUDA cores, clock speed up to 1137 because it is overclocked out of the box from EVGA. 4 gigs of memory, 145 watt TDP. This has their custom ACX 2.0 cooler, so the fans run at lower power, lower noise levels, which is nice. It's got 2 DVI connectors, an HDMI, and a DisplayPort. So you'll need that HDMI connection for your Oculus or Vive device. So useful there. Now you can pick. If you wanted to go with an AMD Radeon R9 390, you can do that. We just happen to lean towards the side of on GeForce just because of their driver support, their more frequently updated GeForce experience, all that type of stuff kind of added into it. But there's a lot of other options out there, either for a 970 or really for all of these components that we're talking about. Now for storage, I'm still of the mindset that you have to have an SSD in your system to be considered relevant in this world. I mean that you're going to regret it if you don't get an SSD. We're going with the 250 gig Samsung 850 EVO. It's a SATA-based SSD. It's only $88. Uses the 3D VNAND, but you're talking about speeds of up to 500 megabytes per second read speeds. Great performer, great reliability, and a fairly low cost. Not the cheapest SSD you can buy, but like the best one that we recommend that also happens to be inexpensive. You've got enough capacity on that for 5+ heavy PC game downloads, 30, 40 gigabyte games. You'll be able to get your OS on there plus about 5 titles. Now, if you say, well, I'm always downloading more than 5 games at a time, or I want to have those on my machine, that's why we have a standard spindle-based hard drive on here. You can pick up a Seagate 2 terabyte drive for $71, or you can upgrade to a Western Digital Red 2 terabyte for $17 more, going up to $88. And a 2 terabyte drive is going to give you enough room for all of your other media that you need to store, any other installation files, applications that aren't as speed dependent as others. But it also lets you move, if you download The Witcher 3 and you want to move all those Steam files to your hard drive because you don't plan on playing it for a while, but you don't want to have to re-download it. You get the capability to do that with an external, or not an external, but an internal classic standard spindle-based hard drive. Now, for power supply, we have over there the EVGA 500 watt. It's an 80 plus bronze model. It's fairly basic, but it's very reliable. It's 80 plus gold, so it's fairly efficient, which means the fans aren't going to spin up when they don't need to. Enough juice to power your graphics card, your processor, and leave a little headroom for overclocking if you want. If you do decide to go down the route of multi-GPU, Crossfire, since it doesn't support SLI, I think that'd still be enough to do it if you look at like the R9 380X-ish style, but you might want to consider upgrading that power supply if you go down that route. For the CPU cooler, even though this is only 65 watt TDP part, I still really like the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo. It's a $29 cooler that's incredibly popular with builders, both in budget systems and high-end systems, to be perfectly honest with you. It's got a lot of heat pipes, 4 heat pipes I think on there, supports any CPU platform, and like I said, dirt cheap for the performance and quality you get out of it. We use a lot of these here at the PC Perspective offices. Finally, we go to the chassis over there at the end. This is the Corsair Spec 01 Red. The Spec 01 is kind of Corsair's budget line of cases. This is a $52 chassis, even with the big window on the side that you see over there. It's got an LED front intake fan. Ours is red, hence the name Spec 01 Red. There are other colors available. You've got room for 5 total fans inside. It's got easy access, thumb screws on the side panel, wire routing grommets internally, and styling. I like the way this looks. A lot of cases is just kind of personal preference. What do you think looks cool or not? Stark designs, angular designs, whatever it happens to be, you're going to find a lot of cases that fit that price point that will have the same kind of features and capabilities. The Corsair Spec 01 Red just happens to be one that we found that we really liked. So if you take all that componentry, you add it all up, we're talking about $939 as of the day we record this. That's a pretty good deal, and again, pretty damn close to our $900 target. I'm pretty proud of what we've been able to do here. This is, for non-VR gaming, this is a hell of a system, right? You're going to be able to play games at 2560 by 1440 at very high frame rates, even with image quality settings turned up pretty high. For VR, you just need to be careful, right? Because you don't want to go below 90 frames per second. So I'm very curious to see if the claims that Oculus made way back in the day about being able to get into VR for $1,500 will hold up. And so we're going to put all this together, run some performance tests, and see what we think. The PC build process for our parts is pretty simple. The Core i5-6500 fits into the Gigabyte H170 motherboard, and installing the Cooler Master Hyper 212 heatsink will likely be the most complex part of your day. Our G-Scale memory snaps easily into place. We take the whole kit and place it into the Spec 01 case, carefully lining up the standoffs and screwing it down. We install the power supply, our GTX 970 graphics card, as well as the SSD and hard drive. After running the power and data cables, the result is a complete gaming PC for around $900. Well, there you have it, our $900 or so VR PC is built here. Total cost, as we record this, as we wrote this guide, was $939, so right in line with our $900 target price. Adding to that the Oculus Rift price of about $600, and we get our $1,500 total system configuration capability there, as we went back to and referenced with the kind of original Palmer Luckey comments from many months ago. Building inside the case was pretty easy. There's only one caveat. There's no kind of opening above the motherboard here to send that 8-pin ATX power cable, so we did kind of have to snake it through the front of the system, which was, it makes things look a little bit less impressive than you would otherwise, but the Spec 01 case was really nice to build in. The components went together exactly as expected, and best of all, the performance of these components is able to match all the requirements we really needed to get VR working. If you looked at the Oculus Rift compatibility tool, which is honestly just a spec check, is your processor meeting or exceeding their recommended specs. We got green check marks all the way down the line for your GPU, memory, operating system, processor, and USB ports, of course. And for the Steam VR test, performance test, where it actually runs through a scene, we got a score of 7.1, which is high on the average fidelity chart, and that puts us well into the middle of the green, the ready spectrum of its performance alignments, right? So as by both Oculus and Steam VR standards, this PC is ready for the Rift and the Vive to be released. And as we saw at GDC, a lot of the systems running, demos running on 970. These developers are targeting the GTX 970 and equivalent performance for kind of a really good experience. And so I have no doubts, no reason to believe that this system built for right around $900 won't be able to get you well through 2016 and into 2017 with an adequate VR performance. Now we have other build guides as well if you're interested in other price points, $1,500 and $2,500 coming up later. So be sure to check out PCPer.com for that. If you need more information on how to actually build the PC, if you need a detailed guide on building your first PC, we'll have that in the description below as well. Thanks, everyone.
If you enjoyed this content, consider supporting in-depth technical content by contributing at patreon.com/PCPer.